helping young people, we all on the same team. When we talk about this football thing, some other stuff come up. But the thing but what I do is I speak truth. He knows there's a standard. He knows there's the way they got to play, and he gonna teach them to play that way, right? And that's why they
Right.
receive. Not that they don't. Then you're able to keep recruiting great receivers, right? But they know because they know you're gonna develop them.
Right.
They ain't had that kind of system in easily 15 years, and that's the difference. It's not just being a recruit 5-star athletes. It's recruiting 5-star athletes and developing them, and that's the part that I'm feeling like. And we talk about patience. A lot of times they were talking about this on a couple of shows here that these ads are sometimes under pressure, but Ward Manuel's ability to transition to this new contract in a way, I think he sees that, right? And whether or not Jim, how long he wants to keep doing it, but getting through that first contract transition, altering it, getting to some of these coaches, I think is going to be interesting. And what it means is, doesn't mean you beat Ohio State. It may not mean you beat Ohio State this year, but it means you got to beat Michigan State. You got to be pissed. Like, you got to win those other games. And
Right.
we're not only losing to Ohio State, but then you were losing these other games. And it might mean you win your bowl game, right? If the only loss or two is against Ohio State, but you win the bowl game, then that's a different narrative. But when you lose to Ohio State and Michigan State and
Yeah.
Washington, right? Now you got a narrative that we can't work with, right? We
Right.
can't. So that's what I'm interested in seeing in this game, man. I know that was long, but you and I, these are things you and I unpack when we
Yeah.
when we drive and talk and text, right?
I don't think Penn State. I don't think Penn State is necessarily a must win. They got to be. They got to be competitive against Penn State, Wisconsin, Iowa, those kind of games. But I don't think they're necessarily all of them must win. They could lose one of those games and still look good. But the game they can't lose is Michigan State, and they can't lose to Washington, especially and with Washington coming off the loss to Montana. You can't lose that game. This is a must win
Yeah, yeah. At the crib too. You
at
can't,
home.
and those big games, if they in Ann Arbor, you can't lose them, right? If you lose them and you lose it on the road against a tough Penn State, that's a different kind of game.
Yeah,
You can't lose to Michigan State at home or on the road.
right.
But and Wisconsin and Madison is going to be a tough game. But you got to find a way to squeak that out. Ohio State, you got to find out where your dog's at right now. Now that game has got to be down to the that game got to come down to field goal. That
Right.
game's got to come down to
It's not.
garbage time. Now I know you trying to show your bias right now, but that's where that got to come. Like
No, I'm being real with you. If I thought it was a field goal game, I'd tell you it was going to be a field goal game. Remember the year Dwayne Haskins was on Ohio
got to
State?
be.
I told you Michigan was going to win that game, and they came out there and laid an egg. I'll be objective with
I know what I'm saying. I'm saying what has to happen. Is it gonna happen? But
you.
I'm saying
No,
that, but I'm saying if you're looking at progress, that game is a nail biter,
yeah.
right? It's not a 2 touchdown loss, right? So if you do all those other things and it's a nail biter, that's different. So that's what
I
we're gonna.
think I think Michigan is in a similar position against Ohio State that Miami was to Alabama. Miami in that game, they didn't necessarily have to win that game, but that was a recruiting game. That game is a game where they had to show competitiveness. They had to be in the game to where you can sell that to the recruits that we're building something. We're not there yet, but if we had you, you know what I'm saying, we will be just another step closer. But if they get ran off the field like Miami did, it's not going to be a good look.
Yeah, and it's similar to what Florida State did to Notre Dame.
Right.
That competitive that gave them former players for Florida State a sign that, oh, we back. We competing, like it came that, like, that type of effort, because early on it was crazy, but they battled back, right? And it's that kind of thing that uh you've got to be you've got to be watching it and make sure that that happens. What other game is out here that's looming for you? I know you mentioned a couple of them. What's another game out here that you like?
Well, I'm gonna bring up the list. I know right offhand you got Ohio State and Oregon. That
Now,
game
talk
preseason
about Ohio State,
preseason
Oregon.
that was gonna be
What do you
yeah
think will happen there?
preseason
Huh?
preseason this was gonna be one of the bigger out of conference games in the for the year. But Oregon in the last week, you don't know if they were holding stuff back because they're trying to, keep the playbook kind of vanilla. You know how like NFL
Yeah.
teams doing a preseason game. You don't know if they're doing that sort of deal against Fresno State or not. But Kayvon Thibodeau, he got banged up in that game. He rolled his ankle. He's gonna play. He's probably gonna give it a go, but he's not gonna be 100%, and that's gonna be a big problem because that was the X factor. If you have a freshman quarterback that hasn't played yet, in C.J. Stroud, how is he going to deal with the future number one player, the number one pick in the draft, Kayvon Thibodeau, rushing the passer?
Mm-hmm.
And if he's not all the way there, maybe maybe they have that much more time to throw the ball to the receivers. And if you know the Oregon defense, their weaknesses are secondary. And the strength of Ohio State obviously is the receiving core. They have the best receiving core in the country. So if they can't get the pressure that they need to get, it's going to be a long night or a short night. It depends. They don't got running clock in college, but it might be that kind of it might be that kind of game. But Oregon, they just gotta hopefully get that pass rush going, and hopefully Kayvon Thibodeau, they get him some ibuprofen or something, so so he'll be ready for the game.
Yeah, and the one thing I think you've talked a lot about even here that Oregon has become much more of a physical team, you know,
Right.
and it's put together some really solid, NFL draft prospects as a result of that. I mean, they're recruiting, in terms of some of the people they're being able to get on the defensive side of the ball. You always think about Oregon and just their offensive explosiveness going back to Chip Kelly and beyond, about that. But, sometimes they got in those big games when, they're playing against an SEC team or something like that, that physical play. But they up front, they are, they got that physical match. They might not be right now ready for Ohio State, but we'll see in it. But it's one of those intriguing things. It's one of those things where it gives you a sense of what direction are we going in. And like you said,
Right.
those recruiting games, right? And this is part of what I was saying about you and I. We're having, we see all this, realignment, everybody reacting to the SEC. The other strategy is just play good out of conference games. So these matchups in the in the Pac-12, in the Big Ten, and other
Yeah.
playing these kind of marquee matchups up front can create narrative as well. You don't always have to add teams. What you do is, you know, be really strategic throughout your conference with those out of conference games and in ways in which you're playing. You might not start out playing, Alabama or uh, uh, even Georgia, but maybe you play in Mississippi State, and then you add in something else. But you're getting some of that competitive juices. You changing the narrative, and that's one of these type of games for a team like Oregon is that they are being very strategic about these matchups with Ohio State, and it's good for Ohio State, right? In a way that you kind of create narrative and brand. So that's one of these good games where you don't have to do realignment. You just have to be very savvy about your scheduling. Michigan against Washington. Without the loss last week, that's an intriguing game,
Yeah.
right? You take the Montana loss out of there, that builds your schedule in a different way,
Right.
Washington. So,
It's kind of like the ACC Big Ten Challenge in
yeah,
basketball. They
yes,
do something like that in football as well, with Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin. Not
yes,
Michigan, Wisconsin. Michigan, Wisconsin. I meant Michigan versus Washington. They
mhm,
could throw Wisconsin, USC down the line, something like that. Or
yes.
shoot, the way they playing UCLA in Wisconsin, that would be a slugfest.
That'd be a slugfest, contrast of styles. You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, no, yeah. UCLA trying to bring a little more of that Wisconsin into
Aren't they?
it.
My goodness. We talked about that on the other show. I'm like, is this the UCLA? Is this the Chip
Yeah.
Kelly I know? It's like, oh, you trying to go downhill and get physical. Okay.
Mhm.
You using another one of them Michigan transfers who's somewhere blowing up. trying to it's just like, my goodness. We just we like I was like, Michigan is like the how the Milwaukee Brewers used to be. Milwaukee Brewers used to bring up all this talent only to really feed it to the Yankees and everybody else. Because they couldn't hold on to them. And so, but you look around, all these players are performing somewhere else, other than our former quarterback down in Tennessee. Like, he struggled a little bit, but and you see the same thing with Wisconsin's former quarterback down in Notre Dame. What do you make of Notre Dame?
Notre Dame, I gotta see. I gotta wait and see. I don't know because I don't know what Florida State is yet. I mean, is Florida State
Right.
really back, or did Notre Dame take a step back? I mean, that's a wait and see kind of deal with Notre Dame.
A recent thing came up here, brother, that was, and you and I didn't even get a chance to talk about this because it just got announced here with BYU and Cincinnati.
Oh,
Coming
with the Big 12, right?
the Big 12. And I actually thought that's a good move. I think Cincinnati
I do too.
always been a program that's been